Shalom, shalom. This video is about the Gospel of John chapter 5 verse 1 to 14. It's about a stale old prayer for healing, and it was a lame prayer at that as well. I'll read the text for you and then we'll talk about it. After this, there was a Jewish feast, and Yeshua went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem there is a pool by the sheep gate called Bethesda in Aramaic. Just my remark, it's Bethesda in Hebrew, which has 5 porches. In the porches, a crowd of invalids were lying around, blind, lame and disabled. Now a certain man had been an invalid there for 38 years. Seeing him lying there and knowing he had been that way a long time, Yeshua said to him, "Do you want to get well?" The invalid answered him, "Sir, I have nobody to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. While I'm trying to get in, somebody else steps down before me." Yeshua told him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." And immediately the man was healed. He took up his mat and started walking around. Now that day was Shabbat, so the Judean leaders were saying to the man who was healed, "It's Shabbat, it's not permitted for you to carry your mat." But he answered them, "The man who made me well told me, pick up your mat and walk." They asked him, "Who is the man who told you, pick up your mat and walk?" But the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Yeshua had slipped away into the crowd in that place. Afterwards, Yeshua found him in the temple and he said to him, "Look, you have been healed. Stop sinning, so nothing worse happens to you." The man left and told the Judean leaders that it was Yeshua who made him well. The prayer in this passage is quite lame. It is, "Sir, I have nobody to put into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm trying to get in, somebody else steps down before me." This isn't a prayer for healing. It was a prayer of hopelessness, full of excuses. He never even asked to be healed because he had no hope left. But we learn from it that God even answers our crooked and lame prayers because He sees our hearts. There is no requirements for prayers to be so perfect that it triggers standing ovation from our own hearers. In fact, the simple, honest prayers from the heart carries more weight than any showmanship. When we read the passage for context, it's immediately apparent that the Gospel of John was translated from Hebrew into Greek by a Gentile believer in the grips of the early centuries satanic anti-Semitism. That probably comes from the 2nd, 3rd or 4th century, when the Christian church first turned on the Jews in persecution. In reading the Gospel of John, we have to constantly remember and subtract that evil influence. It serves, though, for us to distinguish between for God to distinguish between the superficial reader and the one searching for the truth. I motivate this because the translator in Greek did not acknowledge God's Moedim, but he minimized Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, Feast of 7 Weeks, or also known as Pentecost, the 50th day feast. He minimized Shavuot as a Jewish feast. The translator acknowledged that the Moed was kept by Yeshua, but he was the early instigator for the church to reject Adonai's appointed times by calling this a Jewish feast. This paved the way for the undiscerning church to fall into a renewed paganism, as is evident from the corrupted non-biblical celebrations of Ishtar, a fertility goddess, Ishtar festival unto her, and Christmas, which is also pagan. What is clear is that Yeshua celebrated Adonai's Moedim, and so must we do. We must walk in His ways, Haderech Yeshua. The pool of Bethesda was the communal mikveh for pilgrims ascending to the temple from the north, on the opposite side of the temple than the pool of Siloam, which was south of the temple. Pilgrims to the temple either entered from the north and then exited south, or they entered from the south and exited north. The reason is obvious. No one who encounters the living God of Israel can go back the same way as he came. We see the same attitude of the translator into Greek as he used Aramaic instead of Hebrew. The Aramaic name instead of the Hebrew name Bethesda for the pool. The difference is significant. Bethesda in Hebrew means the house of mercy. Beth Chesed combined to Bethesda. Chesed is loving kindness or mercy. While the Aramaic corruption only means the place of poured out water. Bethesda, the Hebrew name, is rich in spiritual meaning, but the Aramaic name denies the spiritual aspects and merely states that the pool is where the waters gather, presumably from a spring or a fountain that gushed at regular or irregular intervals when an angel stirred the water. The Hebrew aspects are spiritual, the Aramaic are merely physical. The translator into Greek denied the spiritual and promoted only the physical. In the Aramaic name of the pool, Bethesda, the envelopes were hopeless and idle, being blind, lame and disabled. In the Hebrew name, Bethesda, the hope of Adonai's mercy, is captured. John named the north gate as the sheep gate, but its known name today is the lion gate. And we know that only in Yeshua the image of a lion and a lamb are combined into one. The name sheep gate refers to the place where the sacrificial lambs were slaughtered on the northern side of the temple. The dung gate in the south was where the ashes and the dung were carried out to be discarded in the Kidron Valley with its symbolism of Gehenna. The certain man was an invalid lying at Bethesda. I deliberately used the Aramaic name. He was lying at Bethesda for 38 years. The number reflects his physical and emotional state. The gematria of 38 relates to exile, sickness, but also to revelation. During the Exodus, Israel spent 38 years at Kadesh Barnea, where the old generation who did not want to enter into the promised land after the bad report from 10 of the 12 spies, that generation had to die off there at Kadesh Barnea, and they were replaced by a new generation who entered into the promised land. So for 38 out of 40 years spent on the Exodus, the nation of Israel was like this certain invalid man, close to the promise of restoration but unable to enter. The link of the Exodus combined with Yeshua's words to this man in the temple after he was healed and after he brought an offering of thanksgiving. And I deduct that from between the lines as the man went to the temple from there. So the fact that he is linked to the Exodus and that he brought an offering in the temple, or Yeshua's words to him in the temple, suggests that the man's lameness came from a sinful transgression on his part in his distant past, 38 years ago. He served his time and now he was restored. I want to promise you that if we take our sin to Yeshua and truly regret and make teshuvah, He will take our sin away, so that we don't have to bear the wages of sin as this man did for 38 years. Yeshua's parting words to this man is the same as what he said to the adulteress, "Go and sin no more." In the fullness of the certain man's 38 years, as it was in the fullness of Israel's 38 years at Kadesh Barnea, the man's Bethesda found its Hebrew roots and became Bethesda to him. He found mercy and salvation in Adonai Yeshua when God visited him. I'm not going to go into too much detail regarding how the fountain or spring used to build up pressure and then gushed water every 45 minutes or so, as I expect that you are well familiar with the angel stirring of the water and how only the first person to enter the pool when it was stirred was healed. John doesn't mention it per se, or maybe this Gentile translator into Greek edited it out because he focused on the physical, not the spiritual, and he didn't want to uplift the Jewish faith. I suspect that this belief of limitation at the pool was the reason why only the first person to enter the pool was healed. But God is not limited. He restores everyone who comes to Him in faith. From the age of 12 years old until after his 30s, Yeshua attended Adonai's Moedim in Jerusalem. And there are 3 Moedims requiring pilgrimage every year, so that Yeshua would have seen this man many times before. I mean, every time when he went to this pool for his mikveh en route to the temple, this certain man must have been there. The fullness of time is a critical aspect in God's plan in and for this world. We have to trust Him. He knows what has to be done in every moment. Why don't you ask Him today to also command you to get up and pick up your mat and walk, then give an offering of gratitude to Him and go and sin no more. That means to make teshuvah, to change your ways, and then you will be restored. That is a biblical promise. Shalom, shalom.